Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Workman. I am the commercial director here with ResinSmart, powered by RTI. If you're on the call today, this is our insider session. You already are well aware that the resin market is stacked against you as a resin buyer. And if you're buying the way you did 5, 10, 20 years ago, you're leaving money on the table. And we're here to talk about what to do about that, how to flip the script. We're not going to spend a lot of time venting. And there really isn't anybody better equipped to show you how to do that than the two folks that I have with me today. Bill Bowie built his career understanding exactly how this game is played and how to win. Bill, you're the founder of RTI, ResinSpark by RTI, and we'll let you tell that story here in a second. And Tyler Wheeler, you've been in the industry buying and have a lot of experiences and are a big part of using data and some of the tools at our toolkit to give the buyers an edge, what the market has always denied them. Gentlemen, I'm super happy to have you here with me today.
Thanks, Michael. Excited to be here.
Well, right on. So resin, as everybody is acutely aware with what's happening right now, if you're a plastic processor, it is the largest variable cost in your business. Yet it has for years been chronically under-resourced and under-focused. Bill, I want to start with you. You spent your early career at America with a mentor that helped shape how you see this problem. Can you talk a little bit about that for the folks today?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I was really fortunate. A gentleman had been pursuing me for a couple years to join America, and I kept thinking I had other things to do. And finally, took the opportunity. And when I landed there, he told me I was going to the Harvard of Plastics, and I would get my master's degree. And a statement couldn't have been truer. My whole career now, 40 years, has been built on those early lessons I learned from Stephen Ross. Just a brilliant businessman, a brilliant plastics guy. What he understood was the value of a half a penny. And as we know, in many cases, it's 5 or 6 pennies. But we always use that example of a half a penny because you feel like you can give away the half penny, but you can't. And what he understood was if he made his input costs lower than the competition, he had an advantage all the way through to the shelf till that person bought his product off the shelf. And so we learned how to use every kind of imaginable polymer that would come across the line. We didn't get caught up on the form, what it looked like, but what could we do with it? And then that involved testing and understanding what you could do with the product once you melted it and put it back into a pellet to use it again. He was recycling in the 70s, not because it was pretty and it was the environmental thing to do, but because he knew it could lower his cost. And there were raw materials out there that still had values. We all know you can use that polymer over and over again. You might break the chain a little bit on one of those heating cycles, but you're going to add back to it with something else, a newer prime material that you blend with it, just a variety of recipes and things you can do with it. So learning all that and then being able to apply it to my purchasing and then helping others over the years, it was an invaluable experience.
Yeah, Bill, that framing the value of half a penny, I know you're going to talk to many, buy from a few. I mean, that's really the mindset shift that we're here to talk about here on the call today. And, let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of buyers here on the call that if we're looking back at last year, probably think that they had a pretty solid year. The world was very deflationary. Costs came down and perhaps there were savings targets that were hit and bonuses collected. Tyler, you've been on both sides of this. I really want to hear kind of your perspective on that scenario as well as your own version of Stephen Ross. I know who played a heavy part into where you are today.
Yeah, for me, I started my career in the logistics and supply chain world, and I found a great opportunity to go work for two just fantastic women leaders, Crystal and Maria. Those were my Stephen Rosses. They took me in. I couldn't even spell polypropylene. I had no idea what I was getting into, but they gave me the opportunity, and what a journey it's been just to re-experience everything that Bill went through, 30 years ago. I went through a very similar journey of coming up to speed, of understanding best practices, of trying to be prepared with data points when you go into negotiation against a supplier that has so many more than you. Um, it was a wonderful experience, and I feel like I really learned from some of the best, being that those were the resin, procurement division at Amcor, which is the largest packaging company in the world. So I had a great experience doing that, and yeah, some of my best years were the deflationary years where, you had some leverage at the negotiating table, where suppliers were really focused on maintaining their share in the marketplace and really didn't want to lose business. I think the last year was a year like that. I know that when I was buying resin, it was forecasted to be that. I know that in this environment, yeah, a lot of people probably hit their 3% savings targets last year and collected a bonus. The question that's uncomfortable is, was that the best you could do? Was that what the market just gave you back? Or did you really fight for something that you deserve and that is backed by data that was even more improved? And that can be tough because sometimes there's some misaligned incentives there where, hey, our target's 3%, the market gave us 5. I'm already making my bonus. What's the incentive to go fight and to really do this well? And that can be difficult to map in down years, but as we enter 2026, mapping that value, being able to describe what you did as a procurement professional in a market with rising costs, that's even more difficult.
Certainly even more difficult, Tyler. I know you had an example with respect to polycarbonate. Did you want to share that now with the group? Because that's certainly been a market that is
Yeah.
been quite volatile. I know with some of those feedstocks that we track.
Yeah. So I listen, like gaining expertise at anything, I didn't start out excellent at this. So maybe this is a bit of a humbling story, but we had a line item that we purchased and it was, only 200,000 pounds. It was a polycarbonate. When I did an investigation, it revealed, hey, you're paying $1.90 for this polycarbonate. You're making something that's basically a commodity out of it. Doesn't need a really high specification, but that price had only drifted up over about 2 years. Come to find out, well, it had just gone stale. It was considered unaddressable. Nobody really called to negotiate. So I thought, all right, well, this is low hanging fruit. I'll go shake them down for. I thought, well, let's be ambitious here. Let's call it 10 cents. So I shook them down for 10 cents. We got 20 grand. uh, you know, Client was happy, I was happy, helped contribute to the targets, only to find out later when we came around to doing a full RFP that the RFPs were coming in at like $1.50. It was like, oh my gosh, like I left 30 cents on the table when I negotiated this because I didn't really have any reference. So that one additional data point showed me, hey, we all were popping champagne over 10 cents. It should have been 40 or 50. And then, even further embarrassment, I get hired on by the ResinSmart team. I see all of the tools that we have here, our should cost models, market data, peer reviewed data, and I realized that it should have been $1.15. Well, that's that's tough.
You didn't know what you didn't know, Tyler. I mean, don't be so hard on yourself. I know that you will be because I know that's who you are, right? But that just speaks to the dynamic of this situation, right? The game was tilted. You thought you won the game, and at the end of the day, you were paying antes, right? Like more ante than you should have. Again, every buyer on this phone call has run into this situation. We're going to dive in a little bit more into this. Bill, I want to bring it back to you because you didn't just read about these challenges in a trade publication, right? You lived them as a buyer. I want you to take us through the Doskassil moment, the origin story, and why Resin Smart by RTI exists.
Yeah, when Tyler was talking to, I couldn't help but think, and that's really part of the Doskassil story. We don't talk about what you can do as a company, going back to the half penny or Tyler's dime or 30 cents, what you can do with that money. Molds, people, training, machines, expand your business. That's money that's laying there that your company can grab because of you doing your job well. Doskassil, fun story. The same guy that sent me there and told me I was going to get my master's degree from the Harvard of Plastics told me there'd come a day when I knew it was time to go. That day came. It just so happened Plastics News had an ad in the paper that allowed me to stay in Arlington, Texas, right here in the Metroplex. And my business partner today, Garland Strong, president of Doskassil, growing the business, expanding it, doing some really great things. But this competitor had come into the market and he heard they knew things about resin. So he started to investigate that. And the funny part of that story is when I interviewed for the job, he was looking for a chemist, a chemical engineer, someone that really understood the molecules. And I convinced him, no, you got to find somebody that talks to many and buys from a few, knows where to find all the hidden gems of opportunity that are in the plastics market. And so we set about doing that. We ended up building a 120 million pound compounding plant to recycle and make Doskassil's resin. They were a polypropylene. That business is still running today and successful compounding and recycling resin for pet mate. That led to the opportunity of saying what I walked into a Daskasil was a purchasing guy that was answering to the CFO, to the controller, to operations, to the mold guys when they had a problem. He was buying paper clips and envelopes in the morning, and in the afternoon, Exxon showing up and negotiating a 10 million pound buy deal with him. And where has he had time, or where has he found the data that he needs to understand? Yet that sales guy walking in the door has what, 500 agreements in front of him that have been cut around the world from all the sales guys that are calling on all the plastic procurement people. And if you're a good sales guy like you were, Michael, you know how to get some of those customers to tell you what the other deals look like from the other suppliers. So he's coming in with these real time understanding of what the transactional price is on resin. What do you have as a buyer to understand that? How are you going to know going into that negotiation? And that's what bore ResinSmart. That's why we started, was to be the guys that are looking at the market, being that expert that's whispering in your ear, helping you understand what's going on. What's the price that you should expect? What should you ask for? And why? Not just what you should, but why you should ask for that price. And 28 years later, the rest is history.
Oh,
Go
go ahead,
ahead, Mike.
please, Tyler.
Well, I was going to say that, yeah, and as you work your way up the curve of understanding how to buy resins, you inevitably get to the point where you end up having like an index driven price mechanism, right? And, just to be clear, we are absolutely not an index. We don't compete with indexes at all. That's not our model. But if we're going to talk real about what these indexes are and what they do, I think it's worth a note because it's like essential to the buying strategy. And I remember thinking, I was buying some medical grade specified stuff, right? Like it's very hard to qualify alternates too. I mean, just like almost 100% supplier leverage. And when I said, well, let's sign up to an index based pricing model, and they said, yeah, we'd love to do that. And I thought, well, you could raise your price on us anytime. You have all the leverage, and yet you're going to allow me to sign up for an index price. So when the market goes down, you're just going to pass that through to me. Well, for this leverage situation, man, that seems like an awful generous offer. I thought once again I was winning on this, right? And only to realize the reason that the sales folks were so excited about this is because those indexes provide a service, an auditable contract trail that allows you to buy resin and benefit from this to some degree. But what about the non-market adjustments? When those indexes inevitably drift in a constant upward motion, like the S&P 500 investment or something, right? They're just always up a little bit, always up a little bit. Eventually that drifts so far from what people are actually paying from that commodity, they announce a non-market adjustment, 30 some cents in polyethylene not long ago. So the only way to really feel confident that you're keeping up with the market is that whatever your negotiating cadence is annually, if you will, when that non-market announcement gets published, I hope you were buying at index minus 30, whatever it was, to make sure that, yeah, you actually were tracking along with the market, because those indexes are servicing two masters. They're servicing both the sellers and the buyers and saying, here's what we think is fair. Not necessarily you as a buyer deserve this leverage. This is what's happening in the marketplace. And this is how to keep up in real time. So the sales folks were eager to sign up for that because their margins just get to continue to grow up the whole time.
Yeah, that's well said, Tyler. It's beyond me that today, 40 years later, since I started my career, that you can go to the internet right now and find out what orange juice and propane and oil and pork bellies, all these commodities, you can find exactly what the parent price is. But yet today in 2026, you still got to rely on an index that says, oh, by the way, we missed it. We're 32 cents high. We're going to, and it's been drifting for 3 years. We're going to take that out of the index, but we're not going to give it to anybody. And I thought about that and I thought, what if I did that with my adjustable mortgage? And my bank comes back to me and says, by the way, we forgot to drop your rate. The mortgage rates have been dropping. You paid an extra $60,000 the last 3 years, but hey, we're not going to give that back to you. Sorry, our bad. Who would put up with that? Who would put up with that? It's beyond me that we still find ourselves in this situation. And the reality is, you guys at ResinSmart, we don't pretend that we're trying to go down the middle of the road. You guys are working for the buyer. right? I mean, there are other information sources. There are a lot of secondary market brokers and companies like that that might have a website and might tell you what's going on in the market. But at the end of the day, just like Tyler just said with the indexes, you're serving two masters. They're still trying to sell you a rail car.
I think the thing that sticks with me is something that was true, you know, Bill, when you were going through this, and Tyler, you've seen this as well, both at your experiences as well as out in the market right now, is, those under-resourced teams, right? Procurement leaders, we've touched on it a little bit, but very under-resourced. If you're a small to medium-sized business, we can argue what that number threshold looks like. You may, as the owner, be the one buying the resin and turning the lights on in the morning and turning them off at night, right? The amount of time that it takes to properly do this is immense, right? I mean, there's an entire business that's created on this alone. And so, that is an element that is certainly going to be a part of how you can transform your operation. So let's recap real quick. A system that's built against you. There's teams that have been stretched too thin. The system itself, right, is you're in reactionary mode, and it's very difficult to take a proactive view. Even for really good buyers, that can be the situation. Even Bill and Tyler, you guys at certain points of your career got burned by this, and that's shaped to where you guys are today. I want to talk now about what is changing, what's changed. The tools now exist to allow you to fight back at the negotiation table. The buyers that are doing this are winning right now, and they're doing these things differently with intent. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I just want to take the pulse of the room though. We're going to do a poll question. We are going to ask how everybody's feeling. Obviously, we're not in a deflationary environment anymore. It has certainly transitioned into inflationary mode with what's happening in the Middle East. How confident are you that your current resin pricing reflects what's actually going on in the market? You can answer. These are anonymized, by the way. Nobody's going to see what you went in on. I'm going to give it a couple seconds to let some of these come in. I appreciate the bravery of some of the folks saying not very confident or honestly don't know. I think that is certainly is a sentiment right now when we have in the polyethylene space alone nominations of, I've almost stopped counting, guys. It's 25 or 30 cents in the last few months for the next few months. Well, thank you for that. Let's transition now. Bill, did you want to say something before we
Yeah,
move?
I
Please.
did, because we can get caught up in 2026 and what's going on. But the reality is, in my 40 years, there are many, many times. A great example, quick story, customer growing, doing great. Business is growing, reinvesting in machines. They were in blow molding. They expanded into injection molding, into a whole new product line. They had some great things going on. And when we got there, they said, look, we buy like 100 million pound buyer. They were buying about 28 million pounds a year at that point. But our supplier treats us good. We're a 100 million pound buyer. The first meeting we sat in, we gave them the notes to understand the data, what they needed to say in that meeting. We never said a word, and they dropped their price 12 cents a pound on 28 million pounds. Add those numbers up. And this was a good company. These guys weren't asleep. The point I'm trying to make is, let's not get caught up in 2026 and what's going on. It's historical. In my 40 years, it's historical that the suppliers have put us in a position where a buyer struggles to find the information they need to know to answer your question, right? That you just asked. Where am I? Where should I be?
Where should I be? Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And yeah, I think a lot of people have just acknowledged that they're kind of feeling that way. And for the last 30 plus years, Bill, you've been helping buyers close that gap. I want to tee it up to you. What are three things someone can take to their office? If they're in their office today, they can put it on the whiteboard on the wall, right? And actually start implementing today.
Yeah, I know. I've we've got our three rules, three keys really. Number one is build your network. Now you might be buying medical low density, but what's wrong with calling the brokers that are selling generic prime low density or transitional low density and understanding what's going on in that market? What's wrong with talking to some distributors, even if you're buying from a producer, and empowering yourself with the knowledge of what's going on in that total market? You might, as Tyler's example earlier, you might be committed through, the medical grade that you're going to pay 30
Regulatory.
cents more. If I walk in as a resin supplier and you tell me right off the bat, I know I'm paying 32 cents too much. And here's some data points of where that same resin is selling at. You've changed the dialogue. You've got what typically happens, right? We used to use the strategy of pattern interrupt. Your resin supplier comes in, same Tuesday every month. talk about what you're going to buy, talk about the market, takes you to lunch. Hey, how about this time? Say, hey, the CFO would like to talk to you. He hasn't seen you in a few months. He'd like to know what's going on in the resin market. Hey, I'll buy lunch. Just little things to change the dynamic of that relationship and what's going on. But really, the key is build your network. Number two is really expand your supply base. Look for areas. And again, it's not easy for everybody. I know you guys are really great at helping people sometimes when they don't think they can expand their supply base because of their business. You're able to find those cracks where they can expand their supply base. And that creates a whole another different leverage point with the supplier. And then thirdly, expand your what resins you buy. Again, maybe not possible for everybody across the board, but is there a segment of your business where when that medical resin guy comes in that's charging you 32 cents too much, you can say, you know what? Last week we changed our high density. We got a new supplier. We dropped our price. It was a great win for us. Hey, let's talk about low density.
Yeah. Guess who's next, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It just opens our eyes. So really just summary, build your network, expand your suppliers, and where you can expand your resin categories.
Tyler, Bill, that's great. Tyler, I mean, you've sat in the buyer's seat on this too, man. What does a buyer need to understand about their own internal constraints? I know Bill touched on that a little bit. Can you maybe expand on that for the group?
Yeah, I think that one of the main hills I had to climb as a resin buyer was understanding, okay, what resins am I buying where? And then what products are they going into and what regulatory constraints do they have? And when was the last time we qualified an alternate? Or is there anything on like the regulatory spec sheets, going back a long ways that like, hey, we used to use this old legacy company that doesn't exist great anymore. That's, transitioned a bunch. And, if we use that one, our qualification timeline goes down to 2 months, not 2 years. Right. Like, so I think that just mapping out and truly doing like a leverage assessment on what you have today sets the baseline that I think a lot of folks, I mean, in my experience and what I've seen out there, a lot of folks don't have a level of excellence to then pile on top of that live market data, actual trends, back page price, or a different non-index view of what the price should be, right? Having those two things together, if you really have those defined well, your savings pipeline identifies itself. I did want to say one thing though, because I thought it was kind of a gangster move. Bill, like LDPE, medical grade example,
Yeah.
calling one of your distributors and telling them you're interested in a generic prime, and then tell them whatever that medical grade you're buying is, PC, doesn't matter, whatever grade it is. Say you're interested for, new product launch, generic prime for that. You're going to get a price. Now that price may not be the market price and what you deserve, but that
Right.
price is going to tell you two things. It's going to tell you what that supplier thinks they can get from you, and it's going to set you a new baseline for whatever you're paying now. So either way, that type of info, if you are limited on your resources, you're not working with a consultant, you're just relying on the indexes, at least that data point is total leverage to go back to the negotiating table and say, hey, I found basically this same grade for this price. Tell me what's so special about this medical grade. Is there gold flakes in it? Do you
Yeah.
hand stretch it? Like what? Like
That's a
what's?
question and answer. We used to talk about gold dust in the packaging, Tyler, on on the sales side, but it's a tough question to answer, right? I think that you are putting the mindset to act in a position of strength, which is
Michael, if I
yeah,
can,
please,
to
please.
Tyler's point, 2026 is the year to do that analysis that he's talking about. Look, the reality is nobody can do anything about the geopolitical events and what's going on and the price going up. We just got to suck it up and deal with it. We're in a unique time, like when we go through a weather event or any number of different events that can affect us. Now's the time to do that analysis and understand, because I heard Tyler make a statement the other day, and I wish I'd thought of it 30 plus years ago. Markets go up like a rocket. They come down like a feather. Sorry for stealing that, Tyler. I'm going to own that one from now on. Markets go up like a rocket. They come down like a feather. Well, what you guys do at ResinSmart and what we've always done is we turn that feather into a rocket. We strip it and we turn it in just to the spine, and we help you push it down, because everybody's got a letter telling you it's going up. Everything is showing it's going up. But who sends a letter to say we dropped 6 cents last week? And oh, by the way, the bigger buyers got 12. Nobody's going to do that except you guys at ResinSmart. But this year is a year to do that analysis Tyler's talking about.
Man, I totally agree. And one of the hardest questions to answer prices because like on a macro level, right? All boats rise in a rising tide type thing.
Yeah.
When your CFO comes in and says, Tyler, what are we paying you for? All of our resin prices are going up. You have a 3% year over year decrease target. What are we doing? Right. Well, when it's difficult to push back and the leverage swings, because let's be real, it does. I have to now explain myself on, well, how are you filling 40 hours of your time if every negotiation you go into, you just get browbeaten and come back to the office? Like, what else are you doing? And
Yeah.
that is exactly the answer, Bill. It is, it's I built a SKU map, I built a leverage assessment, I built a alternate materials qualification pipeline, did a supply risk assessment. Where are we sole source, dual source? Like, as priorities right now are shifting from price to supply assurance,
Hmm.
that buyer's position job title changes a little bit. All of a sudden, you become supply chain governance, you become inventory management, you become um, a watchdog for, hey, we have a supplier that's insolvent in this market, and if they go under, what's our backup plan? So if
Hmm.
you're grinding that stuff every day and you're really building that foundation while there's not much you might be able to do during the rocket phase of this, what's going to happen is as soon as that rocket stops and the feather starts, you now have this war chest to go back to the supply base with and says, I know things now I didn't know before.
Yeah.
Time to come back to the table.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Guys, everything we talked about, from building your network, knowing the internal constraints, the specification, creating competition, you guys, you've lived all this. This isn't theoretical, and it leads to real results. We could talk about the over £1 billion saved. We could talk about 19% savings on average in an engagement. But I want to talk about one specific example. One of our clients, I'm going to obviously keep them anonymous, but a name you'd recognize, came to us in a quarter 4 negotiation cycle. And by the end of that year, we trimmed over 23% off of their polyolefin spend. And that's a 7-figure number to give you a degree of how big that is. And that was in a market that was, very deflationary from a resin standpoint. So, you know, there are things that you can do even in this environment that we've talked about. And it's all about working with the right people in your network, and having that extra turbocharge can really help you differentiate. And, finding yourself saying things like, I finally feel like I actually know what's happening in the market. That's what we want every person that leaves this call today to feel a little bit better about. So let's talk about ResinSmart just quickly. And then we have got a special surprise on something we're working on that I'm going to have Tyler walk through quickly. ResinSmart by RTI, right? It's a platform. It's the platform combination of our data analytics tool with the experts that we have on the human capital side. And that's what really, the combination of those two things is what gives you as the buyer unfair advantage. We're going to tell you where the pricing is going to go, right? That's the main difference. Some of these other tools in the market tell you where they were. That's not all that actionable. We're telling you what you should pay right now and where they're going. Tyler, you've been a massive part of what we're building here on our data transformation. Would you mind giving everybody a little bit of a sneak peek before I mention kind of how we can get going on the benchmarking process?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm going to take this opportunity to also address one of the questions that we received, which I think is a excellent question and one that I hope our audience can walk away with some clarity on, which is, what are the best practices for negotiating a non-market adjustment if contract is tied to an index? And, first thing I would say is everything's negotiable all the time. So you can always come back to the table in resins to have this conversation. But how you would do it and why you would do it, you typically follow an index because, once again, you don't have all the data to show up prepared every day or every month. If a resin buyer had to buy 400, line items and negotiate every month, is that even really feasible? How much research? You'd need a team of researchers just to come prepared for each one of those negotiations. So you do have to kind of default to this index if you don't have any other resources. And what happens when that non-market comes out? Well, the best thing to do is convey to your supplier, I'm not going to get hoodwinked by this non-market. If this happened and I've been riding that market up the entire time, being able to explicitly explain what a non-market is and why you deserve what you deserve, I think is 40% of the battle. I think the other 60% is coming with data backed either cost models or prices or references to say, listen, I have data, I have cost models, I know that I went up the whole time, and I know how non-markets work. So explain to me why I'm still paying this, right? That would be, I would say, a good place to at least kick off the conversation, which leads me into what Michael was just saying. So here at ResinSmart by RTI, we have a platform. And this platform here is ResinSmart, which I'm sharing my screen now, I believe.
You are.
And like when you get in here, you can see immediately, right? We have a feedstock prices, spot prices feed right here. It's live for today, right? And you can see what's happening. I mean, particularly we're keeping an eye on benzene, which is up significantly, month over month. I won't get into a big market update here because there's a lot going on. But the point is, you can see trending today what's happening with feedstock prices. That's going to influence what happens with feedstock contract settlements, which is going to happen to influence what happens with actual production costs for the polymer. And you see it referenced here in price nominations. So if you just received a price nomination from a PC or an ABS supplier, you'd be able to come in here and say, how much of that is valid, right? Let me look at the feedstocks. Is this all feedstock driven, or are you capitalizing on some of the noise from what's happening right now? So with our pricing and forecast tool, it gives you by grade, backwards looking, big market information. If you're buying just big commodities, 2 or 3, 4 grades, this is gold. This is buyer focused only, serving only one master, great data points. Where I think it gets tricky is that it's difficult to do this for engineered resins. The question that I think this industry is grappling with is, well, we've got a little bit better price clarity on some of the commodities. What about the engineered resins? And this is where we're headed with that. So here at ResinSmart, we are able to do a benchmarking assessment for our clients. We're able to turn that around in 48 hours. That benchmark assessment will show you what grades you're buying. So this would be a PC ABS grade for Viridian Dynamics. Those who know, EU plant. Okay. This would tell you what the PC EU costs are, the ABS EU costs are, what their blended base would be, and then adders for logistics, ocean freight, distributor margin. It's an automotive grade, as we know, because this is a TDS verified, technical data sheet verified investigation of this specific grade. They buy quite a bit of volume in this example, so they get a little bit of a decrease for their big volume. That gives you a Resonate benchmark price for your grade, your plant, your SKU. This tells us hey, just data wise on this left side, this is what we feel the opportunity is. Then we move over here to the right side and we're able to say, okay, what's that savings opportunity look like? What's the volume? And then what is your lev gauge assessment? That's just a concatenation of leverage and gauge. It's your lev gauge. It says, okay, if this is, if you're not able to qualify any alternates at all and your suppliers know that, maybe this lev gauge is only a 10 out of 100, right? There's no way you're ever getting away from it. It's an implantable medical device. It's a trigger for an airbag. It's something that's just, nope, we're going to pay what we're going to pay. Well, that is one of the key connectors, because then you're able to say, I know I'm paying way too much for this, but even calling and asking a generic prime grade and getting a great other reference price isn't going to change much. This lev gauge eliminates noise from your pipeline build. And then link confidence process, where we're able to say, how confident are we in the feedstock prices right now? How confident are we in the cost model for this resin? How confident are we in the grade identification, how much data we have from your business as far as like a trailing 12-month spend? And then is this peer reviewed? Have we seen this grade elsewhere in our 3 billion pounds that we have access to of transaction prices? And how are you stacking up to peers in same regions, same specs, similar delivery? So this is full engineered resin cost models normalized for your business and updated with that same engine from ResinSmart with all those feedstocks feeding into this. So if you ever wanted to know, hey, I've got a pretty great feeling on where I'm at with polyethylene, but with that ABS PC blend that we use for that one SKU in that one plant, this is how you start and you come to the negotiating table with powerful leverage. And with the ability to have this updated at your fingertips at a monthly cadence, you're now in some ways, especially with what's happening in the turnover in the resin sales world, even more armed with data than the salesperson that's coming in to negotiate with you.
I was going to say that exact same thing, Tyler. Knowing some of the bucks in organizations on the sales side that I've seen is, yeah, you're more prepared now, let alone being on equal playing field. Let's tilt that playing field in your favor.
Yeah, This is almost scary for an old guy, what you guys are doing. I was thinking about it the other day. All of us walk around with these, but some of you younger people are more comfortable with them than we are, the old guys. And what you've put people's fingertip, nobody else is doing it. Nobody else has got all that data right there at my fingertips to help me buy. We did it back in the day through emails and text and phone calls, and you guys still use all of that. But the ResinSmart team putting it on this and being able to communicate all that and so much more and more in depth. I think I heard you say the other day, Tyler, that if that gap is 31 cents, even if you can't close it, that's leverage every time you sit with that supplier to talk about that resin or another resin or expanding or saying, look, I've got new business coming, but it's not coming to you because we've already talked about the gap that's there. I just think it's incredible. And, Michael, you've always used the example of like a Tom Brady, right? The best of the best isn't afraid to surround themselves with the best of the best. I'll be honest, I had to get this Fitbit so I could get life insurance at one point, right? And I thought, I don't want the man looking over my shoulder. Shoot, I wouldn't take this thing off now. My heart rate, how much I've walked, everything I want to know about my health. So if you want to do something specifically better, then you want experts and you want the information you need right at your fingertips to be able to do that. And that's what you've given everybody with this. It's right at their fingertips. It's just really incredible. Really is.
And you touched something on there, Bill, that I think I kind of want to address, which is, in the world of AI right now and of data transformation and of the ability to build cool visuals, I think you're going to see more and more, I don't know, AI produced and generated misleading things. And it is going to have, some, you're hearing about layoffs in the global markets and stuff because of this. But what is going to be a ongoing persistent skill that I hope is encouraging to all the resin buyers here is negotiation. It does not matter how great we make this cost model. You cannot just slide it across the table, walk out of the room and say, I'll see my savings in the bank, right? No,
Yeah.
there is still tact. There is still temperature. There is still, like Bill said, changing the condition, the conditions, right, of what's expected. And that is a very people facing skill. It's it's an art. It's the art of negotiations. I think that piece of it combined with this, I mean, robust back data backed, tool, those two things together is what's going to get it done.
Now, I'm teasing, but when all the engineers are replaced by AI, it'll be the buyers that are left standing.
That's right.
I don't think you're wrong, Bill. Love and the Tom Brady, right? That shows my Michigan colors. It really is. I bring it back to something that you say, Bill. The people that use us the most over the years have been the people that needed us the least, right? They already had the skills sharpened. It's just where can I find that next edge?
Absolutely.
We're building that next edge for
And
you. And
I'm sorry, Michael, but again,
Right.
it's something I see, looking back now that I happen to be the old guy, which that snuck up on me faster than I could imagine. We all have three things we can offer our family, our community, our church, whoever we're serving, right? We got time, we got talent, and we got treasure. Hopefully the company we're working for is filling that bucket of treasure. But we all only have so much time. And by putting all that information here, I can go out and build a network like those people you just mentioned that use us the most typically have been people that have a network. I can go do that, but it takes a lot of time. And if I already have that network, those really smart people realize this just makes me all that much more powerful. What the Resin Smart guys can bring to me. It's really an incredible thing you've done here.
If this resonates with you, and absolutely intended, I would encourage you to check out ResinSmart.ai. I did drop in the chat our landing page where you can request to start the process for that free bench or for the price benchmarking, where we can create a visual for you, just like what Tyler did. So check that out today. We're excited to get that out into the market. And guys, that's the end of the prepared content that we have. Before we open it up to any other questions, I wanted to give both of you the opportunity to say any final words that you'd like, if you have any closing remarks for the group before the Q&A.
I would just wrap up by hoping that the people listening today took some of the advice that we gave because you can apply it. This isn't nuclear science. It's not building a rocket. It's hard work. It's it's doing the due diligence, it's doing the analysis that Tyler talked about earlier. You can do it. What we're saying is you can do it so much better and so much faster with a partner, with experts that do it every day for many, many companies over billions of pounds. So hopefully everybody walked away with something they could apply to their business today.
Yeah, agreed. I would. It's my favorite, pad thai saying. You can make pad thai at home. It'll be more expensive, but at least it won't taste as good.
At
Some
least it will
things
taste
you
this
just
good.
need a little bit of help with.
I love that. Very good, Tyler.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. I guess would be the one thing I would note. I don't think there's a corner of the resin markets that are going to be untouched by this. We're
Agreed.
already seeing we're already seeing that. Now free advice for whatever that's worth is that there's more of this to come. So we're going to be batten down the hatches mode a little bit, but very closely monitoring price increase nominations, why they are what they are. Kind of getting inside the mind of the supplier a little bit, parsing out what's feedstock driven, what's not. And monitoring the daily spot prices helps for this too, right? Because you're able to say, well, yeah, you settled up, well, last month, but now it's come back down already this month, and now you're nominating. That real time data is an opportunity to tell your supplier they're late. So we'll be doing that as well.
Yeah, just helping to change the posture, right? A lot of people are in reactionary mode and they're seeing the price nominations, which again, I think this is an important time to reiterate that the price increase letter is a nomination. It's a start of a conversation. It's not to be held as gospel. Yes, in certain environments, you'll have more or less leverage, but important to keep that in mind as you're developing your posture. And we're just a phone call away to help you with that. Okay. Well, we won't belabor the point. I didn't see any additional questions come in, and I am going to
Oh,
take.
we've got a new one.
Look, we do. Okay. The question is, appreciate the compliment. ResinSmart dashboard, powerful tool. Can you please confirm if resin specific to each customer will show within individual dashboard space, including where specific grades should be trending in price based on feedstock changes?
The answer is yes. This
That's
is
the
a
vision. Go ahead, Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a insanely powerful tool. When I was at my other resin procurement jobs, I would build this from scratch. It was a very labor intensive, very quickly to run stale document. You see this all the time when consultants typically come in, right? They come in, they spend 3 or 4 weeks running through your spend just to do taxonomy, just to make sure that they have what they think they have, right? Then after that, they do monthly calls and reviews and stage gates, and they get one piece of information independently from the engineers, one piece independently from the buyers. And after all of this big report, it generally tells you what you already surmised about your data and your leverage and your positions. And then once it's done, it just goes stale. It's like a one-time thing, right? What this tool does is it allows us to combine two things. One, a one-time SKU level review of your current situation. Do you have qualified alternates? Does your supplier know you have qualified alternates? Are you going through a distributor? We ask like 40 questions. We log all of these things on just this one, this plant, this resin, this supplier. We log all of them. That gives you your leverage assessment. And then you compare that with the cost model that is also, we have a whole database of resins that are already cost modeled, and that's growing every day. But when you're able to take that cost model and then add on the ResinSmart feedstocks and the ResinSmart fair market prices and all the stuff that we already offer our commodity clients, that's how you can get a live ongoing opportunity analysis. You can identify market drift as it's happening, and you're able to do something like know what the glass or 20% glass filled polypropylene in Maine is worth. And once we do that assessment once, we don't just hand it off and here's a stale document. This gets, as long as you're a customer with ResinSmart, this gets populated automatically and brought to you on demand. So now where this is housed and how we distribute this, like I mentioned, it's a new tool, but we have that in the pipeline and we're eager to do this for you. I
Thank you
hope
for
that
that.
answered your question.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it looks like that was it for questions, and we'll give everybody 9 minutes back here. Really appreciate everybody's attention and participation in the conversation. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thanks, guys.